good afternoon, and welcome to In Focus. I'm Rick Harp, filling in today for Melissa Ridgen. On this week's program, belonging and membership. For many, being a member of a band offers a sense of identity and community. But what happens when membership is denied? And what happens if it's due to discrimination? In a moment, we'll share a story by APTN's Tamara Pimentel. She'll introduce us to a pair of families who say their claims to band membership have been unfairly blocked. Today on Focus, who belongs, who decides, and how. Of course, we want you to join in the conversation. Our phone lines are now open. Call us toll-free, 1-877-647-2786. You can also tweet us at APTN InFocus or email infocus@aptn.ca. Also ahead in the show, we'll sit down with the host of the new APTN paranormal program, Spirit Talker. But right now, let's begin with an excerpt from Tamara Pimentel's series.
8-year-old Lilith Left Hand was born and raised on the Stony Nakota Nation in Alberta. But he has never been a member. His parents, Danielle Mark and Ava Left Hand, who are members, say their son is being discriminated against because they are a same-sex couple. They've been fighting for Lilith's membership since the day he was born. But this is about more than gaining recognition.
I don't know if he's going to have his own home when we're gone, and he grew up here. I don't want him to get pushed out just because of what list he's on, and I want him to feel pride in his community.
It means that they consider us a family. He'll have all the benefits we have.
And they aren't the only ones.
Family's important. Family's always been important.
In Vancouver, Two-Spirit father Wayne Wallace is fighting a similar battle.
When I came to accept myself for being two-spirited, a member of the LGBT community, it was the first thing that I thought in my mind back then, 20-some-odd years ago, was I'm never going to have kids.
Wallace and his husband have twin boys through a surrogate mother. One son is Wallace's biological child. The other is the biological child to his husband, who's Australian.
They're both my children. I created them with my husband, the closest to that heterosexual can create their own family.
Wallace is a member of the Madawaska Maliseet Nation in New Brunswick. While both of his sons are status Indians under the Indian Act, only one child is registered as a member of his band.
You know, we can't have children the traditional way, right? It's just not going to happen. We're two men, we needed the help, and we had the intent of creating our family this way. There might be those that decide to adopt. Should they be also stopped from registering those children as they would consider them their own, to be members of our community?
And joining us now from Vancouver is Wayne Wallace, whose story we just saw. And as you just heard, he's fighting for his child to be recognized by his community of the Madawaska Maliseet Nation in New Brunswick. I'm also pleased to be joined here on set by educator and activist Albert McLeod. Welcome to the show, Wayne and Albert. And just a quick note, Tamara Pimentel will join us to discuss what she's learned doing her series. And just a note, you can watch her full stories on our webpage, APTNnews.ca/band membership. So, Wayne, has the band explicitly come out and said, we do not want to give you membership because of the fact you being part of a same-sex couple? Or how have they communicated their decision to not include your son?
The decision was made based on our membership code, which requires male offspring. So any males that are members in our community that have children have to undergo DNA testing, and if they don't meet the requirement of being a blood descendant, then you're not a member.
Strictly a blood, quote-unquote, DNA basis.
Correct.
Okay. So why do you continue to fight for this right?
For a number of reasons. First, I don't think that's how our communities are meant to look at membership. I really feel that the current state of, specific to my community, is significantly based on colonial ways of seeing memberships, of seeing how a person is Indigenous. I view it as a completely different way. It's part of kinship, it's part of family. You know, an individual shouldn't just be discriminated because of the fact that they're not blood related to their family. And even in my community, there's many people that don't have blood, yet they're members. So I'm asking, why not my son? It's also complex because, as the interview mentioned, I have twin boys. So currently, and the way we created them is essentially we created our family as the closest that we could to a heterosexual couple. So we wanted our DNA, we wanted us to be part of our children. So through the help of a surrogate and in vitro fertilization, we both fertilize our own eggs, and then the best embryo was implanted into a surrogate, which resulted in the birth of our twins. So I currently have one son. Both of them are status, I should say, because under the Act there's no requirement of blood. A child can be status based on either being born to a parent or adopted into an Indigenous family. So currently both of them are status, and one of them is a registered member of a community, the other one isn't.
So what recourse do you have with regard to your membership code?
Well, I appealed that decision, and basically the appeal committee said no, they've stuck to the code and the requirements of the code, so the appeal was denied. So I've since filed a human rights complaint, which is currently in front of the Human Rights Tribunal.
Does the Canadian Human Rights Code apply to custom membership codes? I honestly actually don't know.
Well, the human rights does apply to bands now. It took a while for that to take place, but it is something that applies to them. Whether this issue will go forward at the tribunal remains to be seen. Currently, the band is actually arguing the authority of the tribunal to hear this matter.
Does part of you have hesitation about going to a quote-unquote outside body to try and resolve a quote-unquote internal conflict, if you will?
Definitely. I did try to resolve this within our own community, but never got any traction. Unfortunately, it took me filing a Human Rights Tribunal to get their attention. So since then, there has been dialogue that's opened up in the community about this issue. Unfortunately, people are still stuck on this blood requirement issue and completely ignoring kinship, family, and so on.
How have you been able to access knowledge from various community members about non-blood based? That is to say, as you put forward, more kinship, more adoption, more other forms that maybe predated the relationship with Canada?
It's a little bit difficult because I live here in Vancouver and my community is based in New Brunswick. I have been able to have dialogue through different means with community members, through Facebook, through emails. I also go quite often back home because it's very important for me, for my children to know where we're from and where I grew up and where their ties are essentially located. But it's very difficult. So it's been quite a challenge to get that dialogue going because I'm not there. If I was living in the community, I'd be knocking door to door and trying to have those conversations with members and trying to understand why this is such an important requirement for them. So asking the 5 whys, like continuously asking why do you think this is necessary? Yeah. And why we've done away with how we used to basically be. And I would say we were quite an inclusive community because, as I indicated, we have members currently that don't have blood that are members of our community.
Albert, how about you weigh in? What comes to mind as you hear what's happening with Wayne?
Well, I have some concerns whether there really is bias in terms of the leadership of both communities in treating these families differently because of their, gender identity or sexual orientation. And that, is really not about who we are as Indigenous people, whether we're First Nations, Inuit, or Métis in this country. As Indigenous people, we all have inalienable rights as Indigenous people, whether we're gay or straight. And I detect, in these two situations that there is sort of a bias that could be driving why they're being treated differently as families, and that children are involved, and that really concerns me that adults in the room are sort of, manipulating in terms of the leadership, safety for these children, that, if their parents, determine that band membership is important to their growth, their identity, their future, then why does it have to be a question, And so, to me, I think it really is, we've gone through the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls that has 231 calls to justice that reference Two-Spirit LGBTQI people, and that, bands need to take notice of that, there is discrimination. And in this case, children are involved, and we need to be adults and really, protect these children and give them the protections that they need. And I think band membership, as their parents has requested, is one of those protections that they have a right to. So we need to start thinking as adults, as band member leaders, and this is not going to go away. In July 2018, the FBN approved a resolution at their last assembly in Vancouver that supports a national Two-Spirit people in motion organization to educate First Nations about that we are citizens, we are family members, and we have rights within our community structures. And I think in both cases, with the leaders, they need to consider what is, the future of these children, and why are they being treated differently?
Why
right?
shut out members of
why
our
are they being
communities?
shut out? And the adults need to explain that. There's children involved here, and we really need to be careful what we do.
Okay, I think we have to take a break here, so we're going to do that. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about how membership is determined, who gets to determine, and whether or not, in some cases, those decisions are made in a discriminatory manner. Please stay with us.
Join our conversation now. Call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
And welcome back to APTN in Focus. I'm Rick Harp, filling in for an ailing Melissa Ridgen. Please get better soon, Melissa. And we're talking about membership, belonging, community. Who decides? How? What happens if and when discrimination is a factor? An example of such discrimination potentially on the table here is homophobia. And so we've been asking you on various social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, what you think. And here now is social media editor Jesse Andrushko, here to share what some of you are saying about these questions.
Thanks,
Jesse.
Rick. We put out a poll online asking, should band members, adopted children, or children from surrogates or donors be granted band membership? With over 700 votes, 70% of respondents said yes, 30% of respondents said no. We also received a lot of feedback on whether children in this situation should be granted band membership. Here's what he had to say. Pat said, only if they have native blood. From Bernadine, definitely, family is family. Merla said, depends on genetics. A baby born from a surrogate can still be 100% native because of its parents' genetics. An adopted child might be genetically native or not. Missy commented, there are a lot of 60-scoop babies who can't even get membership, yet those that have even the slightest to no native blood can claim status. Charmaine said, sorry, but the child should be of the same blood as the band member. And lastly, from Mark, it's called birthright citizenship. We have to keep that. If you'd like to add your opinion about band membership, here's how. Join our conversation now. Call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
All right, thanks to everyone for their thoughts, and thanks to Jesse for sharing them with us. Tamara Pimentel joins us now from Fairview, Alberta. Tamara, your series on band membership has been months in the making, so thank you for all your diligence on that. But just before we get into a discussion about what you learned and the things that happen along the way. Let's take a look at another clip from your series, in this case featuring a family in Stony Nakota First Nation in Alberta.
For Mark and Left Hand, this is home. Both grew up on the reserve and both are members. But they both say they don't feel a part of the community. Their son Lilith Left Hand is 8 years old. And although he's a status Indian, he isn't a member of the community he calls home. For 8 years, Mark and Left Hand have tried numerous times to register their son, but he was never accepted. They believe it's simply because they are a same-sex couple.
We feel very discriminated against, and we're very hurt, and we feel very belittled.
I want him to feel pride in his community. And if this is going to keep happening, then I don't even know if I want to raise him here anymore.
During their most recent attempt at registering him, Council asked for Left Hand's name to be removed.
He kind of mentioned, like, you know, if she was off the birth certificate and he was on there, there wouldn't be no problem, is what he mentioned, and that really upset me. Like, I'm not going to do that because she's a parent.
It just hurts that he's treated different because of me. And I don't know, just sometimes I feel like I shouldn't be in the picture just so he can get what he deserves.
All right, that report from Tamara Pimentel, who joins me now. Tamara, what made you want to dig into this topic?
So it was last year when Danielle Mark had posted on Facebook reaching out for help in her community on how to register her son, and she explained why she thinks that he can't be registered because her and her wife are a same-sex couple. So I saw that post on Facebook. I reached out to her. Of course, this is a difficult topic to talk about, so she was very brave in agreeing to do an interview and, you know, just worrying about some of the backlash she might get from her community, but she eventually spoke with us, and I just started hearing more and more stories about it through Danielle.
So exactly what comes with membership at Stony Nakota? In other words, what rights, programs, services, say, might be denied Lilith in denying him membership?
So as Ava had stated in my story, she's worried about Lilith not having a home when he's older, and it's just him. Some of the benefits, health and education benefits that might come with being a membership, and of course just having that sense of belonging and sense of community that comes with being accepted as a member.
Okay, I think we have a call. We're going to go to that call right now. Is that the idea? Hi. Okay. Steve, you're on the air. What are your thoughts on this regard?
Oh, good. Thank you. I think the whole band membership thing is exclusionary. Like there's that mindset to exclude rather than embrace. And now, and it has to do with how we've been, made to think this way, and that's the Indian registry and the status system. You know what? The way it's going to be is that status is going to take away your treaty rights, like this. Say I'm treaty, but then my daughter or my son is not treaty or status as they is. So even though they're a family of members of treaty, they won't have access to the treaty rights because of a law that's not based on your right. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but the bands they've embraced this method of getting rid of their own family members, their own community members, by just following blind into Indian registry. The Indian registry and the band memberships are two separate entities, but the band just grabs onto it wholesale. I'll give you another example. Say, for instance, it takes away some of your sovereignty as an individual. A mom has a child, but she doesn't want to list the father because, for whatever reason, maybe he's no good or he's split. But in order to get the number one category is C61 on the status, you have to register the dad. So even if the father was a status Indian and treated from your, say, reserve or another reserve, they wouldn't have that benefit of that treaty, that status. And that's one of the big things that we're fighting with, because government is really smart. They've used the word status in replace for treaty. So now you never hear anyone talk about treaty. You talk about status.
Steve, do you have any...
like C61 seems to be the best, but it's not.
Right. Do you have any specific thoughts around communities who may or may not be wanting to exclude people because of same-sex parents being involved?
Oh, yeah, that's 100% wrong. I don't see why that's a crazy mindset we've started to develop on our reserves, that exclusion mindset. They should be embracing all your families. Just because someone is same sex and they have a child doesn't mean that that they shouldn't be embraced by the community. Look at traditional adoptions. If you're going to adopt, say, your grandchild or nephew or niece, the community embraces it right away. But why shouldn't they not do the same thing with a same-sex marriage?
Okay, Steve. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Albert, I'd like to get some reaction from you here.
Well, I think, as it was mentioned, the Canadian Human Rights Code was applicable on reserve as of 2011, so 640 First Nations have had 9 years to wrap their heads around this. And I know there has been complaints, human rights complaints, because of how LGBT people have been treated in the past and currently treated. So to me, in this situation, not acknowledging that the parents who have status are the best, interest of their child, wanting, membership, yet the band leaders are treating them like children. They're treating the parents like children and saying, well, we'll decide what's best for your child around band membership. Yet those are adults. The parents are adults. Let's value them. Let's acknowledge them as band members and treat them with respect. Why does this have to go, to meetings and discussions and, vagueness about why people are making decisions, right? And as I said, children are involved. Aren't we supposed to be protecting our children and giving them the best life they should have? Why do we have to play these games about, policy and, appeal committees and all of that? This is 2020, right?
We heard in some of the comments on social media a real investment in the idea of blood, and yet I'm hearing that there's a pushback against this idea to strictly and solely put notions of kinship, membership, citizenship, indigenous forms, solely in DNA, solely in genetics. So, there's a resistance to that idea that it's sort of, it's not from within Indigenous communities, it's come from outside. So how
well,
so?
I don't see threats, right? I see strength. Like if you're a community, a family, you come from a place of strength. And if you have Indigenous culture, identity, teachings, and philosophies, you come from a place of strength. You're not threatened by the outside, right? And I feel in this case that some leaders are threatened by the other, or by difference, or by, custom adopting a child, or giving a child membership. Why would an adult leader in 2020 of a First Nation be threatened by giving membership to a child? That's what I can't understand, right?
Tamara, if I put if Albert's question was to be put to Stony Nakota, how might they answer based on the work you've done trying to tell this story? Bit of an unfair question. I'm not trying to get you to imagine the answer, but I mean, where are they coming from on this?
Well, so when I reached out to the Stony Nakota Nation, their response was, we can't discuss our membership code with non-Stony interests, and they considered me non-Stony interest. So they haven't responded to any of my questions. But speaking with Danielle and Ava, the last membership code they got was dated in the 1990s. So that hadn't been updated to include couples like Danielle and Ava. They told me that their most recent attempt at trying to register him, they were told to take Ava's name, who isn't the biological parent, off his birth certificate. So, you know, he's Danielle's biological son. Danielle's a member of the Stony Nakota Nation. Leela's biological dad, the donor, is also a member of the Stony Nakota Nation. So there really isn't a reason why he can't be registered as a member.
So there's no publicly posted either in the band office or online somewhere a more recent version of the code? I see you're going no.
No, nothing has been posted, and I've asked other members of the community if they've seen it, and of course some people haven't been dealing with this issue, so they haven't really had a need to look at the membership code.
So, you know, Stony Nakota, as we've been saying all along, has what's known as a custom membership code. I'm wondering how many First Nations across Canada may have such a custom code.
So according to the Canadian government website, there's over 200 First Nations that have this custom code, meaning they make all the decisions on who can be a member and who shouldn't be a member.
Okay, and is it, forgive me if I'm not remembering, but this decision for Stony Nakota is made by Chief and Council, as opposed to a separate body to adjudicate or
yes,
administrate? Okay, I mean, so
yes,
it's politicians basically making this decision, and I guess some of the critique is this seems by definition to be vulnerable to politics, and some might say, well, I don't find out if I'm Canadian by Justin Trudeau looking over my my application, right? I mean, have you heard comments like that?
I have actually. I did an APTN Investigates episode on a similar issue just this past October, and I spoke to a lot of members of the Sauvage First Nation who aren't being accepted, even though their blood relatives are part of Chief and Council. They're being told, why do I have to prove that I'm a part of something when they're my own relatives?
So, you know, Albert, some would say that a core right of self-determination is precisely that, the right to self-determine who is and who isn't a member. And obviously what we're talking about here is how that happens and by whom. And I'm just wondering, what do you think would be an ideal process, an ideal way for a community to determine who does and who doesn't belong?
Well, I think in this case we have parents who are members, right? So, you know, they're petitioning for their children to become members. And I don't know why there needs to be this song and dance about that, right? We recognize the rights of those parents, right, as members. And instead of, you know, welcoming them, celebrating them, we're attacking them and saying no and, you know, playing games. And, you know, where is the love, right, as Indigenous people to our members? Right? Do we love our members? Do we care about our members, how they feel? You know, that one parent was obviously, you know, emotionally affected, right? That's the impact, right? And we just went through the national inquiry about trauma and lateral violence. Didn't we not learn anything? And why do we continue to perpetuate that on you know, gay and lesbian parents now and their children? You know, we have to grow up. We have to start being adults. And we have to start loving each other as people. You know, that's our strength, and it always has been, regardless of treaty or Indian status. You know, and we've always adopted children, brought them into our communities and cared for them. That's been our historic tradition.
Regardless of blood connection?
Yeah. And that goes back, you know, up to the 1900s, right? Non-Indigenous people were adopted into these communities because we were humans. Right? It didn't have to be explained to us what our obligation to children was. We knew that.
So where does this focus on blood come from?
I think it's a reaction to, you know, what I've got in my little toolkit, and I'm going to keep it. And anybody outside of that, you know, they're going to detract from that. But, you know, if we come from a place of strength, we have enough to share with other people. Hasn't that been our tradition for 300 years? A place of confidence, a place of strength, a place of sharing, And why do we now, target little children and start to play games with their lives?
Let's bring in, we got another caller on the line. Alice, you're on In Focus. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hi, Alice. What are your thoughts on these questions we've been talking about?
I've been listening to the topic on that woman and her child. And their main concern should be the woman and the child, her child, not what they're doing and who they are. That mother with born treaty rights, and the child deserves to have that right also. So that ban should not be looking at anything else other than who they are and what they are, and they are band members. And for a very well-known fact, Dene people do not discriminate. We don't discriminate. So where are they coming from behaving like that? If they want to behave like white people, why wear their clothes? They need to sit back and think on what they're doing to these people. That child deserves to have his rights.
Sorry, Alice, why do you say they're... What do you mean when you say, why do they act like white people?
They say they want to discriminate. Then people don't discriminate. They don't. We live with one another as one big family. We love one another. We help one another. We don't discriminate. We don't say you can't do this and you can't do that. Like the government's always saying you can't do this, you can't do that. They take and they take and they take. And now this ban is behaving in that kind of manner, taking from this child? That's a disgrace.
Thank you, Alice.
Disgrace to the ban rights.
Thank you for your comments, Alice. Tamara, what are your thoughts? You've been very close to this story, hearing obviously a very passionate, personal topic.
Yeah, so as you can see, it was a very emotional story for Ava and Danielle to tell. They talk about how much Lilith loves his community and how close he is with, his teachers. He stays back to help clean up the school after school is over, and he's really involved with the hockey community. And they're really worried about him growing up and realizing he's not actually being accepted into this community that he loves so much. And I think that can do a lot of damage to somebody growing up, realizing that they're not really a part of their own community.
Well, that brings us to an episode you did for APTN Investigates on this subject. It's called Membership Denied. We're going to hear a little bit more about that from you, but why don't we take a clip from that first. This first aired in the fall of 2019. Let's take a look.
Membership.
And go.
It means different things to different people.
Remember, hang on.
Sometimes it gives you a sense of identity. But for one mother in Alberta, it could do much more.
What I wanted was a relationship with my family, and I knew that if I pursued band membership that I wouldn't get a relationship.
Taken in the 60s scoop, Deborah Serafinchin was raised in a non-Indigenous family. She always longed for a sense of belonging.
You go to a family reunion or you go any place and you hear a lot of, oh, she looks just like her dad, oh, she looks just like her mother, and oh, Deb looks like nobody.
In the mid-90s, she traced her roots to the Sauvage First Nation in northern Alberta. It's an exclusive band. According to Indigenous Services Canada, there are just 42 on-reserve members and over 400 live off-reserve. Sauvage is famous in Alberta for its hotel chain and for the lucrative oil rights it owns. But Deborah didn't know this yet. Something else mattered more.
When I did finally meet some of my family, all I heard was, oh my God, she looks just like her father. There was still a part of me going, yes, I finally look like somebody. I finally belong to somebody.
Serafinchin has a strong claim to Sauvage membership. She is the daughter of the late Chief Walter Twin. When Sarah Finchen tried to become a member of this very wealthy band, she found a mountain of red tape that was almost impossible to climb. Sauvage First Nation declined an on-camera interview, but sent this letter saying, in part, the First Nation wishes to ensure that new members will contribute positively to the First Nation and not create undue hardship on the First Nation. As such, the membership application forms are quite detailed, and the review of the applications is done very carefully. The membership review process may also include other steps, such as interviews. Membership is generally only granted to a small number of people at any one time. Applying to become a member here is rigorous. As this 8-page form shows, there are more than 100 questions about genealogy, financial situations, criminal and driver's records, and even health conditions. The application states, if any information is found to be false or misleading, this shall be sufficient grounds for the denial of an application. So without a recognized family history, and even with the help of her stepmother Catherine Twin, there was no way Sarah Finchen could be accepted to a band that there was no doubt she belonged to.
All right, that story by Tamara Pimentel. Tamara, we don't have a lot of time, so quickly, what is the current situation with Deborah's attempts to wage her fight, and how common or widespread are situations like hers?
So I haven't heard back from Deborah about whether or not she did end up getting membership. She told me that she would stay in touch with me if she did, and I obviously haven't heard back from her, so I believe her situation hasn't really changed. But ever since these stories came up, I started hearing from other people in Alberta from different communities who are dealing with the same thing. And in my Investigates piece, I had about 6 different people speaking up to me about how they aren't accepted into the Sauvage band. So it definitely is an issue that affects the whole country.
All right, Tamara, thank you so much for telling your story and for sharing some of your insights today. Albert, we're going to give you a little bit more time to take care to wrap up. I mean, what do you want to leave viewers at home thinking about?
Well, we work with many First Nations children who are in foster care in Manitoba and in Winnipeg, and we educate them about their band membership, and we tell them that in the future they will have the right to vote for chief and council. So I think all of these bands in Canada around LGBT parents and their children should think about that these children in the future will have the right to vote who they think is appropriate for chief and council of their communities.
All right. Albert McLeod, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, especially on this cold day. What is it, -50? Yeah. And we'd also like to thank all the viewers and other folks on social media who commented on today's topic. If you'd like to catch those stories by Tamara Pimentel on band membership, just go to the website aptnnews.ca/band membership. We have to take another break. When we return, we'll meet the man behind Spirit Talker. Stay tuned. And thanks for sticking with us here on APTN In Focus. I'm Rick Harp, filling in for Melissa Ridgen. Before we switch gears and talk to our next guest, just wanted to sneak in some more comments we received from you about the topic that's predominated most of the show. That is band membership, how it's determined, who gets to determine it. APTN social media editor Jesse Andrushko, what do you got?
Thanks, Rick. We had a lot of feedback about band membership. We asked online, are there issues with who or how band membership is granted in your community? Lance commented, my band transfers in whoever can help them in the next election. Dee said, my son has a Muslim name and the people don't want it on their membership list. Paula responded, second generation cutoff is just another government restriction to continue assimilation. We also had a few comments on our Facebook Live. Leandra said, my daughter is status, my son is not. I am told I need their dad's address, in which I haven't had their address since he moved to BC almost 8 years ago. Annie commented, sad that there's discrimination which does happen on our res too, depends on relationship to the band office. And lastly from Cody, I'm Stony and Dene. I'm status, but me too, I am not a member of either nation because I don't have my biological father's signature on my birth certificate. If you'd like to add your opinion to our topic of conversation, here's how. Join our conversation now. Call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn